In this episode, we talk about Jammu and Kashmir, where Mehraj Malik became the first sitting legislator to be detained under the controversial Public Safety Act. We also talk about the Indian auto sector, where the promise of cheaper cars after the recent GST 2.0 reform has instead left dealerships with heavy losses and customers bargaining harder than ever. But we begin today with Nepal, where violent protests over a sweeping social media ban have forced Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign. Hi, I'm Ichha Sharma, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Nepal right now is in a state of turmoil, with the country witnessing some of its most violent protests in years. In Kathmandu, demonstrators yesterday set fire to the Prime Minister's residence and clashed with the police outside Parliament, prompting curfews and army deployment. The immediate spark was a sweeping government ban on 26 social media platforms. But the anger runs deeper, at aging leaders facing corruption allegations, a lack of jobs, growing inequality, and an economy heavily dependent on remittances. Together, these frustrations have fueled what many are calling Nepal's first Gen Z agitation. Yesterday, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli resigned after 2 days of these violent protests, in which at least 14 people have died, saying he was stepping down to help find a political solution. Security chiefs issued a joint appeal for calm, while all flights at Kathmandu's airport were cancelled. Now, to understand how a social media ban spiraled into a political crisis, our colleague Flora Swine spoke to the Indian Express's Yuvraj Gimire.
Starting off, we now know that this is not just about a social media ban. So can you tell us what exactly are the economic or political grievances that are spiking these protests?
Well, when this new group appeared, Gen Z, all below 30, basically they raised 2 or 3 issues. One was rampant corruption in Nepal. Well, I've often been saying and writing that if there is one thing transparent in Nepal, that's corruption. Every prime minister in the last 20 years, they are allegedly facing serious corruption charges with evidences produced by many media, but the government and parliament hasn't taken any cognizance because that is the privilege they enjoy. Doing corruption and not being investigated is a major crime. They're all, involved in. So the Gen Z group raised this corruption in high places. They wanted a probe. And then recent ban by the government on social media, a platform that was available for them to express their fury and, vision, that deprived them of the platform they were using. Prime Minister Oli and the government were basically trying that by snatching this platform, they would remain silent, but just the opposite happened. And they chose September 4 to do a day-long protest, asking government and political parties to respond to their demand. But before that also, what appeared like warming up exercise, they were using TikTok and available social media, exposing the children of these high-level politicians, their extravagant life, they're frequenting to big hotels in Nepal and abroad, which they have posted in their social media. The situation was building up against them. And lastly, the government failed to anticipate the fact that fury of young people who want to create a situation favorable for their career inside Nepal is difficult from the rhetorical grievances of the political parties.
Of course. But at the same time, how did the government resort to so much violence on day one itself? Because we saw the rubber bullets, we saw the water cannonballing, we saw the tear gases being hurled at them. This level of repression or oppression, for that matter, of the youth, isn't this a little extreme?
It is extreme, and this is not the first time. Oli, personally, Prime Minister KP Oli, who is resigned now, he's earned notoriety in suppressing the political dissent. On March 2, the state resorted to extreme violence during the pro-monarchy agitation. And there are many occasions when people, saying something in social media have been arrested and all that. So after that repression of the March 2 movement, Oli was moving ahead, saying that, whatever I want to do, I'll do. And I'll not let any dissent to grow and expand. That was the attitude the government adopted. And during this movement, 12-year-old child being hit in the head, hospitals, emergency ward being, like a place for vandalism by the security forces. And parliament, people have gone there and they have been targeted by the security forces. This is unprecedented, but this has become the only way in Nepal. And the Prime Minister didn't realize that this will have a huge repercussions and retaliation. That's exactly what happened today. If the state was not as ruthless, maybe today's incident, ministers having to be evacuated from their official residences, Prime Minister having to be re-evacuated, the houses have at least 4 former Prime Ministers and President being damaged, that situation would not have come. Basically, the government provoked.
Absolutely. We shall circle back to the ex-prime ministers and how this has been the only way, like you mentioned. But I want to sort of digress, and I want to know that the numbers of protesters on the streets are unprecedented. It's a massive crowd out there. And according to the last data we had around 19 people killed and over 400 injured. Who are these protesters? Who's backing them? Who are the student leaders or youth leaders for that matter?
Yes. I mean, there are only few names known. One is Purushottam Yadav, who studied in Sarda University here. Other is Saval Gautam, little known, but worried about. Let me also explain a background. This is what I feel. After what has been happening to Nepalese students and other South Asian students also in the US, that used to be their dream destination. They are now realizing that they need to create a very congenial atmosphere for them to pursue their career and grow inside the country, because you cannot be very dependent and certain about what happens in the US. On an average, 2,200 Nepalese youths go abroad for studies, to seek job, maybe Gulf countries, US, UK, European countries. But now when they see some kind of, problems arising in that earlier dream, they are trying to find their future in their own country, one. And now, because in this digital era, IT connectivity is growing, they are into IT business and all that, and they are collaborating, in their own way with the Western companies and generating some employment for themselves and income. The government, by banning social media, deprived that opportunity also. So that really made them angry. And again, the anger of political parties in Nepal, which are led by people above 60, and the anger and vision and dream of people below 30, they are two different things. And a government didn't anticipate that, torturing them or provoking them would bring a disaster consequences compared to the way when nothing perhaps happened when government crushed the dissent of political party. I think that's where the government made a big mistake. I think that if today there is no dialogue and reconciliatory process pursued across the party lines, I think it will be a combination of Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, in Nepal. So I fear that, because leaders have really, really become corrupt and they are not respected by the people. And we in the media have been warning about that. If a process, a violent process begins at some point, it won't end. But, power makes people blind. And that's what they did.
And now that Prime Minister Oli has resigned, the constitution might get dissolved. The latest update that we have is the protesters have stormed the parliament building. What do you think is a realistic road ahead? Do you think there will be snap elections? Do you think there will be an interim government or a caretaker administration like in Bangladesh? Or do you think this crisis will deepen beyond control?
Well, it depends on the wisdom or lack of it on the part of the people leading this procession. I understand the group, given their age, group and all that, they reacted in the way, especially in the face of this repressive act of the government, they reacted in a manner they thought they should do. But now, with the government gone, they have to sit in the negotiation with all the parties. Not an isolated thing not the kind of what the 2006 winners did, excluding one Hughes, that one. Two, maybe, I'm never in favor of Aam playing a political role. But unfortunately, in Nepal's case, with political parties, seen as corrupt outfits, with all the constitutional bodies packed with political activists, army appears to be the only state-bearing institution. So there could be one way could be army acts as a facilitating platform, not to take power, to bring these political parties, scheme, agitating groups together and find a way out. My fear is when in a movement, you don't have a structured institutions leading it, you don't have a known command and control system, that might create further chaos. So I think if the youths are agitating to ensure that they have a better future, and they must work for a society and country where, all sides find a place together. And that's the biggest challenge. If they want to prove that they are better than the leadership they were agitating against, they have to prove their wisdom. Let's see, it's too early to say that.
And next, we shift our focus to Jammu and Kashmir, where a political first has stirred both controversy and concern. On Monday, the police detained Mehraj Malik, the Aam Aadmi Party's lone MLA in the Union Territory, under the stringent Public Safety Act, or PSA, making him the first sitting legislator in J&K to face preventive detention under this law. Officials said the 37-year-old MLA from Doda was booked for disturbing public order at a time when the administration was busy with relief work in areas hit by heavy rains and flash floods. Now, for those who may not know already, the PSA was actually first introduced in 1978 by the former J&K Chief Minister Sheikh Abdullah, Umar Abdullah's grandfather, initially to tackle timber smuggling. But over time, it has become one of the most widely used and most criticized laws in the region. Many right groups have labeled it as a lawless law because it allows the government to detain individuals without trial for up to 2 years, depending on whether the case is linked to public order or state security. Now, to understand the allegations that led Malik's detention and what this development signals, we talked to the Indian Express's Arun Sharma. Arun, we know that Mehraj Malik has been detained under PSA. So what has the administration said is the reason behind it? Like, why now?
So, Mehraj Malik, he was detained under PSA yesterday. There are multiple FIRs registered against him. This is what the administration says. Nearly about 18 FIRs in 16 daily diary, which are maintained by the police. His name figures somewhere at one or the other place. And reason for detaining him, administration says that his remaining free is detrimental to public peace. He is an imminent threat to public peace, basically. And through his social media posts, he is trying to incite people, provoke people against the administration.
Right, and we know that Malik is Aam Aadmi Party's only legislator in Jammu and Kashmir. So talk a bit about his journey.
Mehraj Malik joined politics in 2013 when he joined Aam Aadmi Party. He is a postgraduate from Jammu University, and after completing his studies, he joined Aam Aadmi Party in 2013, I believe. And since then, he had been raising issues. Initially, he used to raise issues of drinking water, broken roads, lack of health facilities in his area. He had a unique way of protesting basically in far off Doda district. He used to lock offices. He used to lock government offices, officers in their offices. If the officer is not available, he used to lock his room, sit on dharna, block the roads. And in the process, he started gaining attention. That was the time when traditional politicians, they were not so active on the ground basically. So he started gaining attention, and in 2022, Aam Aadmi Party, they appointed him as co-chairman of its state party coordination committee. But prior to that, in 2019, when Article 370 was abrogated by the parliament, most of the mainstream politicians, except BJP, who were in opposition to BJP, they were detained under preventive detention. And so there were not much politicians on the ground to protest. Malik was the person who that time also was leading protests, but at that time his protests were confined only to lack of essential commodities to the people. And to this extent, his protests were allowed even by the administration because they were considered not political protests, but pro-people protests. He was raising demand for the local people.
Yeah, and he actually stunned many by winning up its first ever assembly seat in the Union Territory. So, talk about how was he seen as a leader? And also what led up to him winning the Doda seat?
So, in 2020, the first DDDC elections, District Development Council elections, were held in Jammu and Kashmir. He got elected as a member to Doda District Development Council from Kahara. Kahara is his hometown, is a village in Doda Assembly constituency. And 2 years after his election, as DDC member, he was appointed by AAP as its co-chairperson of the coordination committee in the state. And a year later, in 2023, he again attracted the attention of all this administration and even the politicians when he led a march from Kahara to Doda town. Hundreds and thousands of people, they participated in the march, much to the shock of his political opponents, because no one had imagined that AAP will have such a massive footing in hilly Doda district, which was considered to be a BJP bastion, and with National Conference and PDP and Congress following BJP basically. Only these 3-4 parties, their presence was considered in Doda town, but no one had imagined that AAP will be having such a big footing here. As a result, in 2024 election, when assembly elections were held, he not only defeated the sitting BJP candidate, but also former ministers of National Conference and Congress as well.
Right, and Arun, talk about some of the charges that Malik is facing now. Because, as you mentioned earlier, Malik, among other things, has been booked for attacking officials, locking them up in offices.
He has been detained for being a threat to public order and public peace. So far as this is the main charge against. They say that he has been using abusive language. He is assaulting the government officials, even against women. He is using the abusive language. Most of the FIRs which have been registered against him, they carry the offenses that he protested against one officer or the other officer, raising one or the other demand pertaining to general public, like lack of drinking water, poor electricity supply, lack of medical facilities, education facilities, or the officers are not working. Only these kinds of protests he has done, and accordingly the FIRs have been lodged against him. Reason is that in a number of occasions while protesting, he has locked officials in their respective offices, or he has abused them, or physically assaulted them. These are the charges what the administration has leveled against him. Recently, an FIR was registered against him on the complaint of a senior lady doctor working in Doda Medical College. She alleged that MLA used abusive language against her, saying that he will strip her off, he will drag her by holding her hair. These are the charges.
Right, and how has AAP reacted to Malik's detention?
Aam Aadmi Party, except for Doda, this Mehraj Malik's constituency, doesn't have much footing across the province. But at few places they have protested. In Doda district, protests are going on. People from Kahara, his hometown, they marched to Doda town. Police had to resort to lathi charge, and some people, they have been taken into custody also in Doda district. Elsewhere, protests are not of much significance. But yes, not only the Aam Party, other political parties who were earlier opposing Mehraj Malik over the way of his functioning, over the use of his abusive language, they are supporting him. They are criticizing the administration for detaining him under PSA. But BJP has welcomed the move. They say that he was a actual offender, going by the number of FIRs registered against him, and they demanded that such an action should have been taken against him earlier as well. Shiv Sena and Dogra Front activists, they held a protest in Jammu city demanding that Mehraj Malik's membership should be cancelled. He shall be disqualified from the Legislative Assembly.
And Arun, speaking about his detention, what's next for him now?
So far as his detention is concerned, it is not going to affect his membership to the Legislative Assembly because it is a preventive detention. He is not convicted by any court. Now the next step is the matter regarding his detention under PSA will go to the PSA Advisory Board set up by the administration. Board will take a decision about it that the order should be confirmed or it should be released. In next 10-15 days, the decision will be taken by the PSA Advisory Board. Thereafter, if they confirm his PSA detention, then Mehraj Malik will have no other option except to go knock at the doors of the High Court seeking quashment of his detention.
And lastly, Arun, has Malik said anything about these allegations?
At the time of his apprehension, he said that he is being victimized, he is being detained because he had been raising issues of the poor and he has been talking about people who elected him.
And in the end, we turn our attention to the Indian auto sector, where the promise of cheaper cars after the recent GST reform has turned into confusion and losses for dealerships. After the GST 2.0 rate cuts, buyers expected deep discounts. But instead, they've been greeted with disappointment. And this is because dealers say that transitional hurdles are preventing them from fully passing on the benefits. Now, while GST 2.0 has reduced rates on small cars and removed the compensation cess, which should make vehicles cheaper, dealers had already stocked up for the festive season at the older rates. So they have already paid GST and cess on that inventory, and customers now don't want to buy at the higher price. This has left dealers in a bind. To move cars, they're offering discounts out of their own pockets, a hit that, according to the Indian Express's Aanchal magazine, could add up to 2,500 crore rupees across the industry. In fact, this is the reason she writes that many dealers have even stopped billing for new cars until old stock clears. At a Hyundai showroom in South Delhi, the manager told magazine that they're effectively running two price systems. One for cars bought before 22nd of September at the old rates, and another for cars that will be billed after the new GST kicks in. He said discounts that usually ranged between 30 and 70,000 rupees have now been reduced because dealers are absorbing a hit of roughly 30 to 40,000 per car themselves. Customers, meanwhile, are bargaining hard, saying that since GST cuts have lowered taxes on auto parts, automakers should be able to slash car prices further. But to put things in perspective, a Maruti Nexa showroom manager told her that a car is not like paneer. It takes months to make, and there's a whole value chain attached to it. Now, magazine also visited a Mahindra showroom, which looked a lot busier. Its manager told her that demand has held up, especially among Muslim and Sikh buyers, even as Hindu customers wait out the Shraddh period. He added that since most Mahindra models are larger vehicles with engines above 1200cc, the GST cuts haven't been as steep. For now, the industry's biggest concern remains the cess already paid on cars sitting at dealerships. With no clear mechanism to adjust those balances, dealers face a lasting hit to their working capital. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. You can also recommend it to someone you think may like it, with a friend or in your family. This is the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast or write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.